Rosa Tomeus, and together with my family I am the owner of MonteRosola Wine Estate. I'm also a sommelier, and this is my dear friend and colleague Daniel.
So my name is Daniel. I'm working at MonteRosola Winery. I'm also a sommelier, working with sales. But we do have an amazing team down in Volterra who's not here.
Yes, our team in Italy are great winemakers, Michele, Alberto and Giacomo.
And our vignerons.
Our vignerons, yes, Daniele, Dario and Arnold. And yeah, together we form the base of MonteRosola.
Yeah. And for those of you that are not familiar with MonteRosola, we are a winery situated just outside of Volterra. Volterra is an old, beautiful Etruscan village in the center of Tuscany. And they say that we've probably been producing wine in this region for almost 3,000 years, which is quite amazing, right?
That is amazing, it is. And so Daniel, what are we up to today?
So today, in this very first video, we're going to walk you through the 4 basic steps of a wine tasting. Salute!
Salute!
Alright, step 1, to have a proper look at the wine. To have a visual inspection of the wine, preferably under neutral lighting. And also if you have a white background, I would say that that's preferable as well.
And in this step, we look at the color of the wine, the opacity of the wine, and the viscosity. And I'm thinking, Daniel, if you're a beginner at this, how would you explain? Why do we need to look at these factors?
Well, by looking at or identifying these 3 details, for example, if you're blind tasting the wine, you have no idea what type of variety, what vintage, etc. you're having in the glass, you might get some clues by the visual inspection. Starting with the color can indicate what vintage we have in the glass, because over time the color of the wine will change. Secondly, we're looking at the opacity of the wine, so basically defining whether it's a deep colored wine or a quite transparent wine. And this may give us an idea what type of variety we can expect.
So if you look at like a Pinot Noir or a Cabernet Sauvignon,
Yes.
What would that indicate?
Yes, this is a good example, because the Pinot Noir usually you'll end up having a quite transparent wine. It's a thin-skinned grape. So you will probably not end up having a deep colored wine. And the Cabernet Sauvignon, much thicker skin, so you'll probably end up having a more deep colored wine.
Great. And the third factor, the viscosity?
So the third factor, the viscosity, if you swirl the glass like this, after a few seconds you might end up having almost like these tears going down the glass. And this indicates that this is a wine with quite high viscosity. And the viscosity is affected by a few things, for example, the alcohol content in the wine, and if it's any residual sugar. In this case, I know that this is a dry red wine, but I also know that it's a wine with a little bit higher alcohol. So that's why we're getting this higher viscosity in the wine. So step 2, to nose the wine, to smell the wine, to try to identify as many aromas as possible.
And I know this is a really tricky part for a lot of people. It's difficult to find the aromas, it's difficult to know how to categorize them. Could you, Daniel, try to navigate us through this? Do you have any good tips how to?
Well, I would say that, first of all, this is quite hard. Usually it takes quite a lot of practice to be good at this. But my suggestion would be, think big to small. By saying that, I mean think of the broad categories first. If you're trying a red wine, try to identify whether it's dark fruit aromas or if it's red fruit aromas. If you're having a white wine, it might be citrus or tropical fruit categories. If you manage to identify these broad categories first, then you can start to narrow it down a bit.
And to maybe the most important question, the swirling, is it something that's important, or?
Well, yes, actually, this is not just a gimmick. This why we do the swirl is to coat the sides of the glass, and this will help us to amplify the aromas. If you find it hard to do the swirl like this, just use the tabletop and almost like drawing with a pencil, doing a movement like this, and you'll look like a pro.
You can divide the nose of the wine into three categories. You have the primary aromas, the secondary aromas, and the tertiary aromas. Daniel, could you maybe explain for us the different categories?
Well, if we go with the first category, the primary aromas, these aromas you can find in all the wines, because these comes naturally from the grapes. So here we find the fruity notes, the floral notes, and the herbs, for example. All right, and then we have the secondary aromas, and these derive from the winemaking process or the fermentation process, if you like. So created mainly by the yeast in the wine, whether it's natural yeast or if it's planted yeast. So here we can find sometimes the sourdough bread notes, we can even find some yogurt notes or cheese notes, etc. And then we have the tertiary aromas, and these aromas you can find in all the wines because it comes from the aging process of the wine, whether it's in the bottle or on oak. And this over time will create notes like leather, tobacco, baking spice, coconut leaves, etc., making the wines extremely complex and interesting. So step 3, to taste the wine. And tasting the wine is how we use our tongue to observe the taste of the wine. But also, once we've swallowed the wine, we can get some flavors and aromas retronasally.
And I think we all know more or less how to drink wine, but to really taste the wine, to get to evaluate it and get to know a wine, we normally divide it into 3 categories, and it's the taste of the wine, the texture, and the length.
Yeah.
So if you, Daniel, could describe the 3 categories for us.
So, number 1, the taste. As I mentioned, the taste is mainly in this case the structure of the wine, in terms of do we find any acidity, sweetness, might be bitterness, or saltiness. In this case, I would say pay more attention to the first 2, so the sweetness or the acidity. Yeah. So the sweetness we detect mainly from the tip of our tongue, and the acidity we detect from the side of our tongue. In all wines you'll find acidity, but then you have to evaluate whether it's a low, mid, or high acidity. Same thing with sweetness, for example. So pay most attention to those 2 components. Number 2, the texture. So the texture is basically how we perceive the mouth feeling when we have the wine in the mouth. And this derives from a few factors. So for example, more texture normally comes from a riper wine, a wine that has higher alcohol. We were talking about viscosity earlier. But also another component very important in red wines is the tannins. The tannins comes also from the skins, can come from the aging if you age the wine in an oak barrel, and this is sort of like the sandpaper mouth feeling, almost drying sensation in the mouth. Some wines have more, some wines have less. This you need to evaluate as well. Number 3 is the length. So the taste of the wine is also time-based. You have the beginning, the middle or the mid-palate as we say, and the finish of the wine. So what you have to do is to ask yourself, how long does it take until the wine isn't with me anymore? Normally, the longer the better. Step number 4, to think and conclude. This is the fourth and the final step, and what we're trying to do here is to recap everything that we've discussed today. So again, consider the visual part, the nose and the taste. Try to build a complete profile of the wine that can be stored in a long-term memory. Ask yourself the very important question, did we enjoy the wine that we had today? If yes, was it anything in particular that popped out? Was it any characteristics in the wine that we enjoyed? If not, why? Was the wine too unbalanced? Was it too alcoholic, too acidic perhaps? Well, these are super important questions to ask yourself after every tasting session. With that said, thank you very much, Åsa. I had a great time. This was the first of videos in this new series, but there's more to come.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you had fun. The videos coming up will take you through the whole range of MonteRosola's wines and guide you through a wine tasting with these steps that you learned today. We also have some
recipes to come, some food and wine pairings, but there'll be lots. Stay tuned and salute.
Salute.